CM Punk considered an AEW return in recent weeks. CM Punk and Tony Khan have had a couple of meetings, and there's been more details on the All Out build, the Brawl, and the aftermath. Stay tuned for the news. It's Friday night, and there is more news. It was said earlier on Twitter today that Sean Ross...
all newsed out.
I know, we thought we were all newsed out. You probably expected to see us tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
Here we are.
Tonight.
Earlier on today, Sean Ross Sapp tweeted that there would be an update on the situation with CM Punk. Last night, CM Punk put on his Instagram story somewhat of an attack on AEW, Tony Khan, Chris Jericho, and the whole situation around his current situation with AEW. Now, Sean Ross Sapp and Fightful Select have given us a very large update. Now, all the information we're about to talk about is from Fightful Select's report, so that is who we are citing here. We'll just dive right into it because, as I said, there's a lot.
It's almost like stream of consciousness, isn't it? It's just like, whoa.
And when Sean Ross Sapp said on Twitter earlier that it was the biggest update on Punk that they've had in quite some time.
He weren't lying. No.
He was spot on there. So to jump right into the meat of it, he said, in recent weeks, sources close to Punk have believed that his stance on the whole situation, that is Brawl Out at All Out, has softened, and he was said to be open to returning to AEW. Now, we covered and put on the website, and we talked about on the news that this was the case. Punk had been looking to maybe get back into AEW, and it was dependent on Tony Khan. So it seems like this report is confirming that previous report. It says at least one source claims he was willing to apologise for the media scrum, part of the post All Out controversy, but Fightful wasn't sure if it was going to be a public apology, a private apology, or to who this apology would be to. However, after his recent, now deleted Instagram story, they are now
instantaneously deleted.
Yeah, like people were very quick. Yeah, he was like, I'm going to put this up. Oh no, that was bad. That was a bad idea. Why have I done that? Well, it was up, and obviously people screenshotted it. However, after that post, they now believe there is little chance of Punk returning to AEW. Surprised?
Yeah, kinda.
Okay.
Like I've always kind of sat and looked at this situation like, if we can just get past this bit, there's a lot of money to be made.
Right.
And I figured any promoter would be looking at this going, I realise we're all very angry at each other right now. I realise there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of stress, but give it 6 months and in some way, shape or form, we're going to make millions of dollars.
There's so much money.
I don't get it.
Like, there's so much money just leaving on the table. There's a natural storyline there. But obviously, people in wrestling have egos.
Yeah.
And that can get in the road. But thinking about AEW and Punk, it looks like there has been a little bit of contact since that brawl that happened. The report says that there's belief that Punk and Tony Khan have spoken or had a couple of meetings, although no reports on what came from them.
You've got to imagine that generally anyway, given that Tony Khan is CM Punk's employer still on paper, that they're going to be talking at some point.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me at all that they may have been in contact after the situation and more recently in particular, because, you know, things felt like they were starting to die down.
It really did, didn't it?
And now the fire's just been stoked irreparably.
You know, don't post on Instagram late at night. That's the lesson to be learned from that one. But yeah, it seems like things were going in the right direction. It is, as you said, not a surprise that Tony Khan and CM Punk might have had a conversation.
Yeah.
He is the employer. Punk has been out injured for a few months, so probably Tony Khan wants to check on his status. But Punk also supposedly not only spoke to Tony Khan, but spoke to Kenny Omega. This was what the report says was immediately after the brawl back in September. But they didn't get physically involved, which obviously when the reports that came out about All Out and the brawl that happened at the post-media scrum, there was a lot of confusion about what actually happened.
Yeah, and I think for good reason. You know, that it's one of those things where if there is any kind of bust up like this in any company, you wouldn't really expect it to be something that's being touted. Especially something that's getting leaked to the press even. You know, there were few details, and that's all we've really had to go off. It's the little bits and the little confirmations of this person's suspended, this person's going to be away for a while, X, Y, Z. I don't know, it's just, yeah.
I mean, that's also the thing. It's like we've had little bits of information and it's from each side of the argument. We've heard little bits from Punk's side. We've heard bits from the Bucks side.
It's a little bit he said, she said, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But it looks like from this report, it's cleared up the fact that Kenny wasn't they didn't get physical, they weren't involved. Kenny was said to be very calm following this. But the report does know that a production employee ended up getting struck by a chair, which hasn't been previously reported. Now that opens it up to, not that it wouldn't be, the litigation and lawsuits initially when there's a backstage fight, but when it's someone who isn't a professional wrestler, that wasn't involved in the argument.
Production staff are kind of off limits. Having worked in
You've
this
worked in
sphere
wrestling
before, having produced live content before, production staff are off limits. It's one of those things. But unless it's something that's pre-agreed upon, it's something that's going to happen in a given situation. If you need somebody to pull a cameraman to the floor, it's something that's discussed ahead of time. This obviously isn't a situation in which it is worked. This isn't a situation in which it is storyline. This is a very real situation. And so for me, it's more like I can't really see anybody openly attacking a member of production staff. Maybe it was collateral.
It seems like it's
terms
inadvertent.
of somebody's thrown something. Then maybe it's traveled. But again, until we know more details, we can't really report that in any other way. Somebody was struck.
It hadn't been previously reported, so that is new bit of information about what actually happened at the Brawl Out. More talent were supposedly present at that very brawl, though, that haven't been reported on. Now, the report doesn't name anyone in particular, but it does state that they didn't get physically involved in the fight. They were just there, which
again, it's the kind of thing going off the Omega point we just touched on, where it wasn't heated. It's sort of, I think in any situation where there's a fight in real life, in a work situation, in any situation, I think most people are looking to resolve it as fast as they can without any further aggression. So it's one of those things where if you have a group of people backstage, it'd be like, me and you just randomly on a Wednesday afternoon. I walk into the upstairs office and I go, Fraser, I got a problem with you. If I swing for you, I fully expect everybody else upstairs to kind of go, whoa, what are you doing
here?
So there's always going to be more people involved on the periphery. But I guess this sort of gently explains why AEW took so much time in doing an internal investigation, because you're not quite sure who is or isn't involved in a more direct manner. You don't know who's on the periphery. You don't know who's taking collateral damage. You don't know all the facts. So you need to lock everything down. You need to work everything out, get every story straight, and work out exactly what went on.
And that's the thing, you've got to get the root of the situation. I failed to mention there that on the Kenny Omega point, though, that Punk apparently told Omega that his issues weren't with him, which is very interesting. Obviously, we know that there was something that sparked the rant that Punk went on at All Out, and it looks like they had spoken after the brawl, and he said it wasn't with Kenny.
I think when you look at people with the tenure of Kenny Omega, with the tenure of CM Punk, with the things they've been through, with the industry that they grew through and eventually went on to top, right? There's got to be times in which they've had issues with other wrestlers, and over time it becomes less of an issue of, hey, let's sort this out physically, and more, hey, here's where I am. You don't any chance to limit this sort of exchange where it gets violent, where it gets aggressive, you're going to take it, because ultimately you're not there to fight with your colleagues. And Punk, as an individual before, has been very outspoken about the way that promotions have treated him, or promotion in particular. A certain promotion treated him in the form of WWE. And so you've got to feel like any major gripe with him is going to be maybe related to that. I don't know.
Well, Punk also had supposedly told AEW, now jumping away from the brawl, actually at All Out, just before that, he returned to TV. He obviously lost in quite a controversial fashion to Jon Moxley in a squash match that we never expected to happen. I think it was one of the most shocking moments of TV last year. But Punk had apparently told AEW that he wasn't comfortable competing at all before being cleared for the title match at All Out. And there has also been some creative issues regarding the Dynamite match on August 17th. That was the squash match that Jon Moxley beat him in for the title, where they unified the interim and the main belt. And this kind kind of lines up with what Punk was saying in his deleted Instagram post, where he talked about Moxley's Rocky 3 pitch, which Punk apparently has not seen.
Just real quick, Punk, how have you not seen a single Rocky film? You were in UFC. I get that UFC's mixed martial arts and boxing's only an element of it, but it's Rocky.
It's Rocky.
Come on,
Punk.
Ultimate underdog.
Yeah, as you said. He's never seen any of the Rocky films, but
He's lost my respect. How do you not know who Ivan Drago is?
Right? I mean, watch Creed. They're
Hearts on fire, man.
But it's interesting that he had specifically asked not to compete until he was cleared, and that maybe explains some of the little weird booking that went on.
It's not surprising though.
It was like,
this is a man who almost, went through unbearable physical punishment, if not potentially death.
Yep.
Because of mishandling, at the hands of somebody else. He's somebody who's going to be very into
safe.
The safety of what he's doing, and rightfully so.
Like he said on his Instagram post last night, he's going to prioritize his health over companies,
and that should be this shouldn't be just a special case. This should be everybody. This should just be the norm.
This should be the norm. Well, he regarding that match, supposedly special travel arrangements were made for that day of Dynamite to get Punk there, and he did at least float the idea of, and I quote, additional reimbursement due to his claims that he was working without being cleared, which obviously, I feel like that's a very valid argument to be made. That could be many things. Obviously, additional reimbursement, your mind springs to pay.
Yeah, immediately you see
anything.
The word reimbursement, you think money. It could be any number of things. It could be a case of, it could be something as simple as, well, if I pay for this hotel and this travel, you can pay for my hotel for the next 5 dates or whatever.
Exactly.
It could be any number of things. But again, this is more of a civil issue, yes. I guess. It's not something we can really comment on until more details
about
potentially eventually known.
It's just interesting that in that situation where he came back for that squash match, we had what should have been about 6-7 weeks of storyline in one
condensed
10-day period, and it was like, here we go, here's him losing, here's him getting his comeback in the crowd, here's the Rocky moment, and then he wins. And then you can maybe understand a little bit of the frustrations of, like, this was meant to be a long thing, this was meant to be a big storyline going into summer, and then he's been called in while he's injured to put Moxley over. There appeared to, though, have been some heat between Punk and Moxley based on people Moxley spoke to after All Out, specifically the Brawl. Presumably, he was being critical of Punk. Moxley also helped lead the reported locker room meeting alongside Chris Jericho and Bryan Danielson. And Punk and Jericho supposedly also have heat, and apparently a confrontation after the Brawl. Jericho called Punk a cancer. There is no reported heat between Punk and Danielson, which is not surprising. They go way back.
Jericho's been watching his Seth Rollins interviews.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's quoting some Seth Rollins there. Maybe he did the evil laugh as well. But it's interesting. It's not like something very shocking. There's some information. We know that Jericho put on his own Instagram story the Matt Hardy
the immediate delete.
So it looks like there's a little bit of beef there. He did say
Jericho's an EVP, right? Jericho's tied into the company, so it's. If he's not an EVP, he's somebody who's been linked to the company very much since the very early going. So it's not surprising that Jericho may have more of a company line, especially given his position in the industry right now as a bit of an elder statesman. He's somebody who's been through a lot of this sort of stuff before. Maybe he's just trying to kind of keep the waters calm.
I think that's a good way to put it. An elder statesman role. He's kind of that locker room leader backstage in AEW. Along with
Punk
Moxley
should also be an elder statesman.
He should also be
but then
one of
the
those.
problem is you can't say your complaints aren't valid, because his complaints are valid.
They're completely valid, and I feel like that's the thing, is his complaints are completely valid, but also at the same time, it's like it's CM Punk who has had issues like this in the past, and it feels like there is. People doubting him and butting heads.
There's been a lot of sentiment in our own comments section about Punk from the video last night. Where certain people taking certain sides on the matter, but that's just going to be the nature of how this works, given that this is wrestling, right? Yeah,
I mean it's been a long time since September. I can't believe WrestleMania is next weekend, but it does say that some of the heat has died down since September's All Out. But it notes that there is plenty that remain, which isn't surprising when you've got locker room leaders like Jericho and Moxley, who maybe have a little bit of heat with Punk, whereas maybe some of the folk that Punk looked out for and looked after in backstage, you've got your FTRs, that maybe they probably, it's like, I can imagine the locker room is quite divided. Apparently, though, Hangman Page, who Punk had a little bit of heat with going into his match at All Out and called him out on TV, made an effort to remove himself from the situation between he and Punk, and he looked to move past it. That's probably the most professional thing in the situation. Remove yourself from it, move past it. Finally, we're going to look at the last sort of little bit notes here from the report. New Japan, Punk appeared at. He appeared in the crowd at Battle in the Valley. It was Mercedes Moné's debut match at Battle in the Valley. New Japan were supposedly not aware that Punk was planning to come to the show, and were keen to let AEW know that they weren't trying to show them up by having him in attendance. Lars Fredriksson of Rancid, very good friend with CM
Seen
Punk.
Rancid about 5 times. One of the best punk bands still going. The next time they play Newcastle, you're coming to see them, Fred.
Oh, that'll be quite entertaining. I hope Punk's there, because Lars Fredriksson invited Punk along, contacted Rocky Romero, and went, I've got a mate that wants to come to Battle in the Valley.
I see you angling for free New Japan tickets, are you?
And
you're going to get friendly with Lars Fredriksson, are you?
Yeah. But it was CM Punk, and Lars Fredriksson's mate who turned up, they didn't expect it to be CM Punk, but apparently he was there to support Mercedes Moné. They go way back, obviously.
This for me is the weird bit. It's like, why wouldn't you just AEW have a working relationship with New Japan? At the same time, they're like, why would you think, hey, I'll come to the show with you? You don't know if they're maybe going to know you're there. You don't know if you're going to be on camera. But at the same time, you are CM Punk. If they do see you, you will be on camera. It just feels like one of those things you'd kind of go, hey, I'm going to the show tonight just in case you see anything.
Yeah.
But again, it feels like it was resolved immediately, as they said, and it was one of those situations where, you know, it might have just been a last minute kind of thing. Nobody knows. Nobody's ever going to know, are they, really?
New Japan's on.
This is like the minutiae of the detail that we'll maybe ever find out.
It's the inverted pyramid.
If we get a Luther's autobiography level rundown, maybe we'll know.
It's the inverted pyramid. That's what we're going for. Get the bottom information. But Punk tore his tricep at All Out, and apparently he'd be cleared now, or at least very soon. Now, obviously, when we go back to the start of the video where we were saying that the heat seemed to have died down, there seemed to be a lot of talk about him possibly coming back. It makes sense that his injury would be he'd be recovered or recovering from his injury to a point that could maybe lead into that. But that,
One last thing. Just before we go, I know this has gone long.
It's gone long,
guys. I get that, but one last thing, just to kind of appease last night's comment section. What do you think the percentages are that this is a work? Because I've got to ask this. You know, I have my own opinion on this, but people were saying last night, it's a work, and it could be a work.
Personally, I don't think it is a work. In the sense of you might disagree with me.
No,
based on that
I agree. No, I
you agree?
fully.
Okay, cool. Because I don't think it is a work.
That was more like a.
Oh, thank God! Thank God you're relieved. I don't think it's a work in the sense of this feels too sort of like he deleted his Instagram post.
Once you get to this point, it's a little bit kind of like, ooh.
I would love to be proven wrong because, as we said throughout the video, there is money to be made there for them. As a fan, I would love to see FTR and CM Punk versus Kenny Omega.
You tell me every single person, including the member of production staff that was involved, is going to be in this fight and given a weapon. I would pay you $50 to watch that. And I know a lot of other people would too. But again, there's a lot of personal relationships and personal situations that we as fans aren't privy to. And so, you know, it may never happen.
It may never happen. But to answer Sam's question, let us know in the comments below. Do you think it is a work?
Is it a work? Is it a not work? And if not, then what have you had for tea?
Let us know what that is. What you've been having for dinner. We will see you tomorrow morning. There's lots of content coming out. Worst shows ever. Watch it this weekend.
Do it. Yes, do it. It's a very good edit.
Right. Have a good night. We'll see you later.